Kenyans turn out in large numbers to vote in the general elections, as security is beefed up across the country. How social media posts could help diagnose depression. And an African expat brings the taste of Uganda to the U.S. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githui. You are in for Vincent Makori, who will join us shortly. This is Africa 54. Now, standing by live in Nairobi with the latest election news is Africa 54's Vincent Makori. Vincent, a huge voter turnout today. Were there any major issues?
Not exactly major issues. That the large turnout became an issue because across town, across the country, in fact, polling stations were having to deal with long queues of voters. In fact, in many places, there was a lot of frustration because people went to the polling station, some as early as 2 a.m., others 5, 6 in the morning, and said even 5 hours later, some of them had not been able to vote. And so because of that, you can say that was an issue. But on the other side, there are some who claim that at a few polling stations, there were some anomalies where, for example, one clerk, election clerk, appeared to have been stamping the back of the ballots rejected. And of course, that wasn't an instruction coming from the Electoral Commission. They say that had been taken care of, and some of those votes would still be considered valid because the stamping happened behind on the back side of the ballot paper. Otherwise, across the country, there have been reported a few cases where perhaps some officials or kind of low-level officials or some parties were found trying to bribe people at the polling stations. We hear the one arrested. We'll wait to hear the court. Other than that, not major issues, except for a little delay here, a little delay there, frustration because of long queues right up to the time when it was officially supposed to be polls closed.
So are there any provisions, Vincent, for those who are lining up to vote and were not able to do so at the times the official closing of polls took place? Are there any provisions to allow them to vote, or that's done?
Yes, well, the Electoral Commission has actually a few minutes ago updated citizens on what's happening on the ground, and as regards those who are in line by 5 p.m. Time of polls closing would be allowed to vote. There will be at least an extra 2 hours for those who are in line but were not able to vote. They all are allowed to vote until at least 2 hours later. So the Electoral Commission Chairman Wafula Chebukati just spoke a few minutes ago and said nobody should worry. As long as they're in the line, they will cast their votes and their votes will count.
Now, Vincent, do we expect, when do we expect provisional results actually, and especially on the much-awaited presidential ballot?
Well, what's happening right now, actually, they have started releasing results from different polling stations. And so the process of releasing and transmitting the results will continue all night, and we can expect by tomorrow morning we'll have some kind of a picture of what is going on. Up to the time that we're speaking now, a few thousands of polling stations have already completed their tallying, and the transmission is going on. So we have a few thousands of results, especially for the presidential candidate, with President Uhuru Kenyatta at the moment leading, and President Raila Odinga doing sadly, but that is to.
Wow. Vincent, we're having a little bit of technical issues with we're having a bit of technical issues there, Vincent. We'll leave it there. Hopefully we'll catch up with you a little later to find out what's going on in Kenya. Vincent, thank you very much. Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent Makori reporting live from Nairobi. Opponents of South African President Jacob Zuma have gathered in Cape Town to call on the country's lawmakers to vote him out of power in a secret ballot Tuesday. The no-confidence ballot needs 201 out of 400 parliamentary votes to succeed, and Zuma's African National Congress has a strong majority with 249 seats. ANC party leaders have called on their members in the parliament to support the president. VOA's Ladza Hoke reports.
Monday protests were organized by a coalition of civil society and religious leaders and were to go on until the secret balloting ends Tuesday.
We see the ANC as having given us Jacob Zuma, and we're saying to the ANC, take responsibility for the absence of leadership in this country. Recall your president.
Zuma has weathered numerous attempts to oust him since becoming president in 2009 because members of the majority ruling party supported him in open votes. A secret vote is expected to ensure a credible outcome.
I therefore determine that voting on the motion of no confidence in the president on the 8th of August 2017 will be by secret ballot.
ANC party leaders are worried that ousting their leader could undermine the party's image among ordinary citizens and have called on their lawmakers to support Zuma in the secret vote. Some South Africans think it would be unconstitutional to oust the president.
Even though they decided on a secret ballot, I think President Jacob Zuma will still survive it, because he's the people's president.
But under years of public pressure, South Africa's Constitutional Court ruled that a vote of no confidence in the president is legal. If the vote gets enough support in the secret ballot, Zuma and his cabinet would have to step down. Many ANC members would prefer to let him stay in office until his term expires in December, when the ruling party elects a new leader. But for many South Africans, Zuma is only part of the problem.
We've got a lot of problems here. First of all, the youth is unemployed. And we are living in squatter camps. The government has been promising us houses for years and years, but to no avail. They always come when there's time to be voting, but then after votes, nobody comes to us.
Analysts predicted that Zuma would survive the no-confidence vote Tuesday, but said he was not likely to win the factional struggle within the ANC, the party which has dominated the South African political scene since winning the 1994 election. Zlatisa Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Major General Joe Harrington, Commander U.S. Army Africa, recently sat down with VOA's Carla Babb for an exclusive interview on U.S. operations and the situation on the continent.
Thank you, General, for speaking with Voice of America today.
Carla, it's good to be here. Thank you.
One of the things I've been told in this building is that the key point of U.S. Army Africa and AFRICOM is to work alongside the State Department to share the State Department's goals. Would you agree with that? And if the budget is cut at the State Department, how is that going to affect your exercises?
Well, when we work with the State Department, I don't get to decide the funding for the State Department or Defense, but I will say as we work with our African partners, as we work with our interagency partners, there's 3 Ds. It's development, diplomacy, and defense. How we apportion them and work with them is, you need 3 legs of a stool.
How many countries do your soldiers actually touch?
In the AFRICOM region, you have about 53 countries that are on the continent. Egypt falls into the CENTCOM area. On any given year, we touch anywhere from 40 to 45 of them, either in engagements or actual soldiers on the ground.
Wow, and so how many operations is that roughly per year?
The question is really how many activities do we do there, and somewhere in the order of 300 or so for U.S. Army Africa, and another 9 or 10 exercises we do with our African partners.
Let's talk about some of those exercises and operations across the continent. In Somalia, the Army just put in a few dozen from the 101st to train some of the Somali Army. How is that going?
Actually, those are soldiers that fall under the 1st of the 101st, and they fall under United States Army Africa. And I was in Somalia last month visiting them during the course. They are training Somalis how to drive to keep their logistics going. And it's going very well. So we're pretty happy with the progress that is going on that particular training mission.
So by drivers, you mean?
Truck drivers. And I happen to be a son of a truck driver. So visiting that course, I had an interesting time talking to the Somalis that were taking it and the soldiers that were giving it.
Do you see this continuing throughout your tenure as the head
absolutely.
of U.S. Army Africa?
Yes.
Is that going to expand to other goals in the future?
Well, like I said, I'm sending people there and we'll do an assessment. So we're all working together to understand what the problem is, and we're also working with our mostly European partners on how we can help the Somali National Army be effective in securing its own population.
For our audience that is wondering, why is he not talking about special operations and conducting strikes?
I'm not a special operations officer.
Tell our audience, please, the difference between special operations in Africa and U.S. Army Africa's job.
That's a really good question, Carl. I appreciate that. But U.S. Army Africa, what I try to look at is how do we look at a long-term approach to Africa? How do we help the professional capacity and capability of armies deal with their own problems? And the special ops, they're dealing in their special niche that they're very good at. What I'm looking at is the general purpose Army. How can we help them improve their security? How can we help them improve their professionalism? Do the population run towards an army or run away from an army? And there's some bad history going back years in Africa that they were afraid of their own soldiers. Well, working with them on a regular basis and watching the evolution since a lot of those things happened years ago, it's very encouraging to see where those armies have come to.
Major General Joe Harrington, thank you so much for speaking with VOA today.
Thank you very much, Carla.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, could your social media posts be a window into your soul? Stay with us.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
This is BizBeat.
Food waste, such as bad fruit, can be costly to a business, and that's where Cecilia Larson comes in. According to Larson, 30% of the fruit market goes to waste.
It could be reason that the box are broken or have been damaged in transportation. It could be tiny, tiny dots from hail. It could be damp boxes.
Larson's Swedish startup Rescued Juice takes rejected fruit from supermarkets like apples to make apple juice. She gets boxes where 3% of the apples are bad, but the other 97% are good.
So this is a pallet that we got today with apples, and as you can see, this apple is quite perfect. So what we do is that we sort the good ones from the bad and make juice from the good ones.
The pallets of apples come from as far away as Argentina and South Africa. Larson produces more than 40,000 bottles of juice a month and delivers the product to 150 stores and eateries around Sweden. For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
It's time now for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with information from the newly released blindness report. Hello, Lino.
That's right, Esther. A new research suggests the number of blind people across the world is set to triple within the next 4 decades. Writing in the medical journal Lancet Global Health, researchers predict cases will rise from 36 million to 115 million by 2050 if treatment is not improved by better funding. They say a growing aging population is behind the rising numbers, and some of the highest rates of blindness and vision impairment are in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. Analysis of data from 188 countries suggests there are more than 200 million people with moderate to severe vision impairment. That figure is expected to rise to more than 550 million by 2050. The study calls for better investment in treatments such as cataract surgery and ensuring people have access to appropriate vision-correcting glasses. Now, social media powerhouses, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, allows us to share aspects of our lives with our friends, family, and the world. But what does what we are sharing say about our state of mind? Some new research suggests that it may be telling the world a lot more than we think. VOA's Kevin Enox reports.
We live in the age of sharing. Events, great and small, moments, big and little, become chapters in the book of our online lives. It turns out some of the information you're sharing may be saying more about you than you think, says Chris Danforth via Skype.
Yeah, I think that, with so much more of our life happening on the internet these days, and the ubiquity of mobile phones in our lives, there's just a lot more that we're revealing about our behavior maybe than we're even aware of.
The mathematician and his colleague Peter Dodds created some machine learning tools to analyze people's Instagram posts.
We found out basically that people who had been diagnosed with depression, their pictures tended to be darker and bluer and grayer. If they chose to use a filter, it tended to be the black and white filter Inkwell. That's the one they chose more often than any others.
You can see the differences in some of the images Danforth analyzed. Grayer blue filters versus the vibrant colors of the originals just look, well, depressing.
It's not new news that people who are depressed see the world in darker colors, spend less time in social groups. But being able to infer this from social media, that was something new.
Danforth says it could lead the way to an app that alerts your doctor when you're in emotional trouble.
Maybe 5 to 10 years from now, if studies like the one we've done here, they bear fruit in larger groups and they're reproduced, you could imagine installing an app, downloading an app that you consent to having your data shared with your physician so they can know when it's time to see you sooner.
Danforth points out there are also huge privacy concerns involved and that more research is needed to figure out how well machines can diagnose a human's state of mind. Kevin Enochs, VOA News.
Now get this, life-size 3D models used by Hollywood for creating amazing visual effects can also serve as props for surgeons practicing complicated operations. Doctors at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland say even experienced brain surgeons can benefit from training on realistic life-size models of a human head. VOA's George Putich reports.
Shooting a horror movie with grotesque characters often involves creating realistic three-dimensional models of faces, limbs, and depending on the level of gruesomeness, even internal organs. Based on that, surgeons at Boston Children's Hospital, working with a Hollywood special effects group, started a simulator program for practicing brain surgeries.
What ended up happening is our simulations felt more and more like films. They felt like cinematography. They felt like theater.
This lifelike model of a 14-year-old child's head also contains a realistic brain on which a surgeon can practice treating an excessive buildup of cerebrospinal fluid, a condition often seen among teenagers. Now, training is mostly done on cadavers and even certain fruits and vegetables. But a 3D model is better because it can be created with the specific anomaly surgeons have to operate on.
And we can do this in training courses in the United States, or we can take these models and work internationally and bring them to teach surgeons how to do this operation and other operations using 3D printed models. It's safe, it's realistic, it's repeatable, and the real beauty of this is that we can actually use the instruments that we use in the operating room on the 3D printed model heads.
Creators of 3D surgery models concede it may be a challenge to persuade their colleagues to find time to practice on their simulators, even though studies show that training improves both the efficiency and the outcome of surgeries. George Putich, VOA News, Washington.
How about that? Well, that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @Lenore Moudou. Back to you, Esther.
Thanks, Lino. Be sure to watch Lino Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, bringing the tastes of West Africa to the United States. We'll be right back.
If
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines.
In Kenya, millions of people cast their vote in their country's presidential election amid fear of violence. In South Africa, protesters march against President Jacob Zuma as lawmakers start debate on a no-confidence motion that can drive Mr. Zuma from office. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, opposition groups launch a two-day general strike attempting to force President Joseph Kabila to allow elections and adopt a 3-month-old power-sharing deal. The Rwandan government plans to raise the number of households connected to the power grid to 70% by 2018.
That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
And welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Nigerian entrepreneur Oscar Ekiponimo is helping reduce food waste in Nigeria. The software engineer has developed a web app known as Chowberry, which enables charities to shop for products that are about to expire at a discounted price. The organizations later distribute the products to children's homes and low-income communities, ranging from cereals, cooking oil, and powdered milk to snacks, among other groceries. In Nigeria, the World Food Programme says 1/3 of children under the age of 5 are stunted, and conflict waged by Boko Haram militants in the northeast has left over 4 million people without access to enough food. Next up, you're never too old to code. When 82-year-old Masako Wakamiya first began working, she still used an abacus for math. Today, she is one of the world's oldest iPhone app developers, a trailblazer in making smartphones accessible for the elderly. Frustrated by lack of interest from the tech industry in engaging older people, she taught herself to code and set about doing it herself. Wakamiya learned the basics of coding and developed Hinaden, one of Japan's first dedicated app games for people over 60. She is now in such demand that this year, Apple invited her to participate at their prestigious Worldwide Developers Conference, where she was the oldest app creator to participate. And finally, Israeli emergency medical services are used to responding quickly to emergencies. With ongoing instability in the country and the region, Magen David Adom, or MDA, the National Ambulance Service for Israel, has a lot of experience in dealing with multi-casualty situations. The MDA has now developed an app with the aim of cutting emergency service response times to make the service even more efficient. The app shows a caller's medical history and location. By pushing a panic button on the app, the user can start a video call or chat. The My MDA app is available in 6 languages: English, Hebrew, Russian, Arabic, Amharic, and French. And that's what's trending today. Now, the United States is near the top of many bucket list destinations. Solomon Sewanja of Uganda's NBS TV, cameraman Godfrey Badibrae, and VOA's Paul Ndiho hit the road across America on a 2-week trip reporting from different states. Today, they take us to a suburb of Boston, Massachusetts, Waltham Town, where Haji Abuz Matovu is serving up popular Ugandan delicacies at his restaurant, The Karibu.
Boston in the United States is like Kampala for Uganda. It is here that most Ugandans in the country reside. As one of the oldest cities, Boston is famous for its place in the American Revolution. The city, which covers 48 square miles, is home to 673,000 people as of end 2016. And including the suburbs, the population rises to 4.4 million. Here, we meet up with our own Ronnie Mayanja, who has lived in Boston for over 10 years and knows the city's systems and culture. He offers to show us around. His favorite place to view the Boston skyline is at the famous Boston Harbor, where American protesters kicked off a revolution by dumping crates of tea into the bay. So we take a boat cruise along the Charles River. From a distance, Boston comes alive as you gaze at the numerous skyline with the setting sun. It's a Kodak moment for us. The boat cruise is not only for tourists, it's a means of transport to people who live on several islands. It has been a long day and it's time to look out for a restaurant to have a meal. Ronnie tips me off about Karibu Restaurant, a place where they cook Ugandan food. We drive from downtown Boston to Waltham. We're at Karibu Restaurant, and here we find people speaking Luganda. It certainly feels like home. It is mealtime, and wow, guess what's on the menu? Ugandan cuisines, matoke, rice, cassava, pumpkin, sweet potatoes, and my favorite, chapati. It comes along with chicken and beef stew, greens, beans, and a glass of passion fruit juice. This already whets my appetite. As we enjoy the meal, I am wondering how the restaurant is able to run with the kind of food that is not usually common in the United States. So, later, I sit down with Haja Bas Matovu, the proprietor of Karibu Restaurant.
Initially, our market base was Ugandan, 100%. However, 3-4 down the road, everything started changing. Karibu Restaurant, because of our great service, our great food, we started attracting other communities, Kenyans, Tanzanians, Americans of different colors.
But where does he get the local food?
Before, we could get matoke from the Indian store, but the problem was the competition was sharp and enormous. So we decided to look back home where we come from for supplies. So now we have constant supply of bananas from home. There's no day you come over here looking for matoke and we don't have it.
A buffet here is at $13, which is about 45,500 Ugandan shillings, minus taxes, which is about $6 per plate. Nevertheless, Haja Bas faces a major challenge when it comes to running the restaurant.
The majority of restaurants, especially the employees, make their money from tips from the customers. The problem is Ugandans don't tip. Even when they have lived here for 20 years, 15 years, they will never tip.
He's not just a boss here. He also gets to serve his clients. And for him, he looks forward to every new day, not only to serve, but also to be a unifying factor to all Ugandans in Boston. Solomon Serwanja, NBS, Boston, Massachusetts.
Mouth-watering indeed. That's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune into VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching and good night from Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. When something loses its original shape or form, it does not look very natural or comfortable.
Bent out of shape.
Hey, did you tell Greg about my dinner party?
Yeah, I did. I thought he was invited.
Well, now he's all bent out of shape because I didn't invite him.
I'm sorry.